Hello everyone, I am the Bandit Kirby. Welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of the Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a commander from the Ravnica Clue Edition product, Commander Mustard. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel and no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You could also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with the logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Commander Mustard is a 5/5 human soldier with vigilance for 3 generic, 1 red, and 1 white. He has a static ability giving vigilance, trample, and haste to other soldiers you control. If that wasn't enough to indicate him as a Lord Commander for soldiers, he has an activated ability for them too. For 2 generic, 1 red, and 1 white, soldiers you control deal 1 damage to the defending player when they attack. Since you don't need to tap Mustard to activate it, you can do this as often as your mana allows, making your soldier army deal way more damage before the block step even happens. Suffice it to say that Commander Mustard wants tons of soldiers to send across the board. Better yet if all those soldiers trigger the damage multiple times. This is why the best equipment for Commander Mustard are Battle Mage's Bracers and Illusionist Bracers. Thanks to these equipment, each time you activate Commander Mustard, it's like you're doing it twice each time. This means that the triggers will stack on your soldiers for even more damage. Bonus points for having both equipped at once. If that weren't enough, a good warlord needs a throne. Roaming throne, to be exact. Choosing soldier as a creature type means that all your soldiers will deal even more damage to your opponents since the throne copies all of their triggers. Having all these cards in play will help you deal a ton of damage. Same with cards like City on Fire, Fiery Emancipation, and Gisela Blade of Gold Knight. The first two triple the amount of damage your sources deal to opponents and their permanents. These are already amazing on their own, but together they non-upple the damage dealt, and that's not even counting if we're copying the triggers. Gisela might only double the damage dealt to your opponents and their permanents, but she doesn't care what the source is. So if your opponents are hitting each other, that damage will be doubled. And then any damage dealt to you is halved rounded up, which is an amazing bonus. Oh, and on a flying first strike 5/5 body. As for how we're getting all of those soldiers, tokens of course, the deck is running Finale of Glory, Horn of Valhalla, Rise of the Hobgoblins, and Decree of Justice. These all get us X soldiers for an investment of X plus a little more mana. Later on we'll see how the deck accelerates its mana. For now, sinking a ton of mana into these can potentially end the game next combat. Especially since Finale of Glory could also make X for Flying Angels, Horn of Valhalla can insanely pump a single creature, i.e. our commander, Rise of the Hobgoblins can give our red and white creatures first strike until end of turn, and Decree of Justice gives us those soldiers at instant speed while drawing us a card and not technically casting a spell, so it can only be stifled. Prava of the Steel Legion and Myrel Shield of Argive also create soldiers while being soldiers themselves, which is super important in a deck where we want as many soldiers as possible. Prava won't create as many as Myrel, but it's a great mana sink while also pumping your soldiers +1/+4 during our turn, helping them survive going on the offensive. Myrel further helps our combat by disallowing opponents from casting spells or activating certain abilities during our turn. Kil'jaeden Outpost, Mobilization, Thousand Moons Smithy, Elspeth Tyrell, Elspeth Sun's Champion, Platoon Dispenser, and Assemble the Legion aren't soldiers but are permanents that can nonetheless create soldiers for us. Be careful with the land since it requires sacrificing a plains as it enters the battlefield. Both Elspeths can only create soldiers once per turn for being planeswalkers, but that's fine because their other loyalty abilities are still good, especially the board wipe type ones. And that's without considering Sun Champion's Epic Emblem. You can control when you create the tokens with Assemble the Legion, but if this thing lasts a couple of turns without being dealt with, it's going to pop out a ton of hasty soldiers. Thousand Moons Smithy creates a busted soldier token when it enters the battlefield, but once transformed, becomes a land that will create that token when casting a creature or artifact, something the deck has plenty of. Lastly, Anointed Procession, Mondrak Glory Dominus, Ohertak Deepest Foundation don't create soldiers themselves, but multiple amounts of tokens we create. The first two double the amount of any token we create, while Ohertak doesn't. That being said, Ohertak triples the amount of creature tokens we create, which is absolutely busted here. And just like Mondrak is very hard to get rid of. When it dies, it returns transformed as a land. You can then transform this land when conditions are met to get Ohertak back. With Mondrak, you can very easily get its indestructible counter in a tokens deck like this one. Forbidding Watchtower and Mutavault aren't soldiers, but I'll mention them here because they become soldiers when you activate them. They don't take up slots in the deck, so they're 100% worth including. Other ways of making our soldier army dangerous is outright pumping them up. Castle Embereth, Shared Animosity, and Starlight Spectacular are amazing here. The land in particular, since it doesn't take up a slot in the deck. Shared Animosity is absolutely busted since all you have to do is attack and then all your soldiers get a massive power boost. Same with Starlight Spectacular. I'm surprised this card isn't included in aggro decks that can run it. It essentially pumps your creatures consecutively in a line, with the last creature getting the biggest buff. It's definitely worth including. Cathara's Crusade, Coat of Arms, and Eldrazi Monument give static pumps so they work in any turn at any moment. The Crusade has the potential of giving a huge amount of +1/+1 counters on your whole army when creating multiple soldier tokens at once. The Monument requires sacrificing a creature during your upkeep, but that's fine with the amount of tokens we can create at any time. +1/+1, flying, and indestructible is absolutely insane in an aggro deck like this one. True Conviction is another static boon, but it doesn't provide any pumps. That being said, Double Strike is incredibly strong in an aggro deck as well as Lifelink. Yes, combo and commander damage laughs in the face of any level of life, but if we're gaining a ton of life, we can risk alpha striking each turn since the clapback won't kill us. Fortunately, we've reached a point in the life of the game where we have plenty of card advantage and interaction effects in red-white. Even better, a lot of them are on soldiers. For example, Esper Sentinel, Firemane Commando, Mentor of the Meek, and Sophina Spear Sage Deserter are all soldiers with built-in card advantage effects, so naturally, they're all in the deck. Esper Sentinel is a stacks effects, but just like Rhystic Study, Smothering Tithe, and Mystic Remora, players tend to not pay for it. In any case, even if they wanted to pay for it, it'll be harder to do when it's massively pumped. The Angel draws us cards on combat and also incentivizes opponents for not attacking us. This is great because they either attack into us and not draw a card, or hurt each other to draw the card. Mentor of the Meek is a classic. However, keep in mind that static effects take precedent, so if your soldier tokens enter the battlefield no longer 2 power or less, it will not trigger. It's a shame that Inspiring Commander is still locked behind being a digitally exclusive card. There's nothing about it that prevents it from being printed on paper. It's even a soldier to boot, making it even better for Commander Mustard. If Ardent Angel, a previously digitally exclusive card, got a paper reprint, and this had an element of randomness that was updated to be die rolling instead, then Inspiring Commander could definitely see a paper reprint. But I digress. Now is not the time for that rant. Lastly, Sophina doesn't draw us cards per se, but she does create clue tokens, which can be doubled with Anointed Procession or Mondrak. Skull Clamp has the potential of drawing us a ton of cards at the expense of killing weenies. Do keep in mind that we won't be able to clamp our weenie tokens if their toughness is statically pumped, or if they have any +1/+1 counters on them. Minas Tirith, Slumbig Canyon, and War Room all provide card advantage without taking up a slot in the deck. The Canyon requires sacrificing to draw the card, so keep that in mind. It's great for the late game, but it's the second land in the deck that leaves us in negative land count in play. Sure, we get lands from the transforming cards, but keep this in mind with the deck's actual land count. Reliquary Tower is another land that doesn't take up a slot on the deck. While it doesn't provide card advantage per se, it's worth running due to the card advantage effects already in the deck, and it doesn't bog down the 2 colors. As for interaction, Entrapment Maneuver and Martial Coup provide removal and soldier token creation all in one. The former only hits an attacking creature of an opponent's choice, but it gets around Hexproof, Shroud, and Indestructible, so it's amazing against Voltron decks. The latter is a board wipe, which could be bad for us, but we'd obviously only play it when the other boards are better than ours. Plus, we get a bunch of soldier tokens for our trouble. Blasphemous Act and Vandal Blast are still included because not every card in a deck needs to be synergistic. Sometimes you need something that will always get the job done. Catapult Master, Cathar Commando, and Intrepid Hero are soldiers with built-in single target removal effects. Catapult Master and Intrepid Hero can be reused, but Cathar Commander requires sacrificing to activate. At least it has Flash, which essentially makes it a synergistic instant here. Speaking of, Chaos Warp, Generous Gift, and Stroke of Midnight are obviously included. Maze of Ith type effects don't really do much against this deck, but sometimes we need to be able to also hit things like Cabal Coffers, Nick Those Shrine to Nix, Rogue's Passage, etc. Guthrie Writes History is another amazing removal spell. Sure, it hits us, but we can send a token under the bus to get something much better from our library, all while potentially disrupting our opponents. As for opponent's own interaction, we have Bastion Protector and Boromir, Warden of the Tower, both soldiers. As the former gives Commander +2/+2 and Indestructible, which is amazing against removal and damage, but also makes him a 3-turn clock. Boromir counters free spells, which is already huge against unfair decks that cascade, discover, or just straight up cast spells without paying mana for them. However, his most important ability is sacrificing for free at instant speed without tapping to give our creatures indestructible. This is super important for token aggro decks. Iroha's God of Victory doesn't give our creatures indestructible, but it makes them harder to block, plus also prevents all damage that our attackers will deal. And that's what our soldiers want to do. Attack after being motivated by Commander Mustard. As for further protecting our board from anything and everything else, the deck's obviously running Galadriel's Dismissal, Boros Charm, Flawless Maneuver, Teferi's Protection, Clever Concealment, and the no more half of Gallifrey Falls no more. Mass phasing out is much better than simply Mass Indestructible, since they protect our tokens from mass bounce effects, but casting Flawless Maneuver for free goes a long way. Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, and Mithril Coat help protect our commander. Not that the deck won't function without him, but he costs a whopping 5 mana to cast the first time, so having him die multiple times a game sucks. Same with having him countered, which is why Cavern of Souls is included. The deck is mostly soldiers, so obviously this will help protect casting our other key soldiers from getting countered. But more often than not, this is great at casting our commander the first time. As for mana acceleration, you can't go wrong with Smothering Tithe. Yes, it sucks having to ask each time if your opponents are going to pay the 2, but red-white needs all the help it can get in getting mana acceleration. We can't just rely on the deck's Soul Ring. Plus, we also have the potential of doubling those treasure tokens, so we can do a lot with it. Sword of the Animus, Bitterthornus' Animus, and Sword of Hearth and Home are amazing mana acceleration pieces because so many players refuse to run mass land destruction effects, so being able to accelerate our mana by getting multiple lands per turn is always good, especially in an aggro deck like this one. Wayfarer's Bauble, Burnished Heart, Scampering Surveyor, and Solemn Simulacrum are still included as the deck's generic mana acceleration pieces. Red-white decks don't have many options, but these are still good enough for what the deck wants to do. It's not like we're attempting to cast 8 mana spells anytime soon. Apart from those already shown and mentioned, the rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. It's running all 7 fetch lands, Sacred Foundry, Sacred Peaks, Alpine Meadow, Sundown Pass, Spectator Seating, Rugged Prairie, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 5 of each basic land to make the most of the deck's basic land wrap effects. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Commander Mustard. As of the recording of this video, to me, this is the best commander for a soldier deck. Not only does he give them keyword soup, but also a way to deal further damage that can be done multiple times as well as easily copied. Not only that, but he's not 100% necessary to have in play for the deck to function. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of the Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Meta Kirby, and happy brewing.